Hi there, welcome back everyone. I'm FIDE Master Johan Rees, and today I'm going to be talking to you about the opening rules. So if you watched my introductory video where I said about explained what I meant by rules. Now, one thing to bear in mind with the opening, a lot of people kind of know these rules. They know what they should be doing, what they shouldn't, and you might think, oh, I know that, I don't need to see this again. Now, what I find is that people know these rules, they kind of know how to follow them, and then they start thinking that they're an expert, and they start moving pieces twice in the opening, and they start to be a bit slow with their development. And actually they get worse after they've already gotten better. Okay, so and most people below maybe 2000 rating, even or maybe even higher than that, they're not following these opening rules, and they're actually playing a lot of really bad moves in the opening. Just by following these basics, you can get really good positions against very good players. What I would suggest is that you think of the opening like a race. Okay, so I'm going to go over 3 or 4 rules with you, and you're going to think of it as a race. The first person to win this race is going to have a bit of an advantage in the middle game. You're going to start the middle game sooner, and if you're very, very quick at getting developed and getting your king safe, you might be able to catch your opponent's king in the middle and get a really nice quick win. Okay, so let's jump over to a board and take a look at what are my opening rules. Okay, so my first rule is to occupy the center. Okay, so when I'm talking about the center, that's the center of the board, and one of these 4 squares, at some point in the opening I want to get a pawn into one of these 4 squares. The reason is that if we don't occupy the center, if we don't get a pawn into one of these squares, then we're going to have a lot less space. If we have a lot less space, then we're going to be squished. We're not going to have space to move around and do what we want to do. So we need to get a pawn at some point into one of these 4 squares. So one of the most common ways to do that is with your first move. So a very common first move is e2 to e4. And then black will reply e7, e5. Now, that's a very common way to start the game, and both sides have obeyed my first rule here. They've occupied the center with a pawn. Okay, the second rule is to develop your minor pieces. So minor pieces are the bishop and the knight. So we want to be developing these pieces, okay? And onto good squares. So generally we would want to bring our knights out first. Okay, so something like knight to f3. The reason that we want to bring our knight out first is that the knight has got limited options. If you think about the options for this knight from g1, it can only go to 3 squares. Now, knights on the side of the board are not very good. Okay, so on the side of the board, if we just imagine that this knight goes to h3, it can only then go to 4 squares. Okay, so it's only got 4 options, and we like to have lots of options for our pieces so that they can take part in the game as much as possible. So knights on the side, not very good. The other option that this knight has is to go here. But if you remember me saying the opening is a race and you want to finish it as quickly as possible, so you don't want to be moving pieces twice, and this knight stops this bishop from coming out. So it's getting in the way there, so that's not a very good square. So the knight only has one option of a good square to go to, and that's on f3. Now if we count how many squares it can go to from f3, it can go to this square, here, 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 here. So that's 8 squares that it can go to. That's twice as many as if it was on this square, if you remember. So it's kind of twice as good. Now my rule number 1 was occupy the center, and the knight on f3 puts pressure on black center as well, so it's doing lots of things. So it doesn't have many, and knights don't have many options, not many good options, so you might as well put it on its best square to begin with. That's the reason that we bring our knights out first. The bishop, on the other hand, has got lots of options. So it can come to this square, this square, this square, this square, and this square is not so good, but it's got lots of options. And depending on where black puts his or her pieces, then it might be better on one square or the other. So it's better to wait with your bishop sometimes. Okay, so minor pieces out is my second rule. And ideally we're going to put our knights out first, unless it's really obvious where we want to put our bishop. So we're attacking this pawn. Black is going to obey the rules as well by bringing this knight out. And I'm going to obey my own rules by bringing this knight out. Fantastic. And then black is going to play by the rules and bring his knight or her knight out as well. Okay, so the next thing is to develop my bishops. And I'm going to bring it out to this square, which indirectly puts a little bit of pressure on this square. I'm threatening to take this knight at some point and maybe win this pawn. And then black is also going to obey the rules. I'm going to try and get this bishop out. And I'm doing this as quickly as I possibly can, if you see. So I'm not moving any piece twice. I'm just bringing each one of my minor pieces out. Okay, so you can do this in different orders. However, we do aim to bring our minor pieces out first. Let's see if black goes here. Now, rule number 1 has been obeyed. Both sides have got pawns in the center. Rule number 2 has been obeyed. All the minor pieces have been developed. Now, rule number 3 is to get your king safe. Okay, so kings are normally in danger in the center. Not always, but they're normally in danger in the center. They want to be tucked up in a corner somewhere. If you imagine in a war, the kings would be safe in their castle. So the king wants to get tucked up in the corner, not in the dangerous middle. And white and black can castle here. And that's rule number 3. So the king is nice and safe behind these pawns. It's got lots of pieces around guarding it as well. So really nice and safe. And then rule number 4, we don't always get this far. This is the least important of the rules, is to connect our rooks. So for example, I will go here. What I mean by connecting the rooks is that both rooks are protecting each other now. So they're connected and they can come over to the middle if they want to, or they're all protected. And this would be the end of the opening. Now,